Hello, everyone. Welcome to the presentation of the power of the incredible 5-point scale, how it transformed a group of clients. My name is Enid Hurtado Stremming, and I'm excited to share this information with you today. The learning objectives will be for you to describe the benefits of using the incredible 5-point scale by identifying 3 outcomes of using this tool with autistic individuals. The second one is to design an individualized incredible 5-point scale by completing a template about yourself. I know this is virtual, but you'll see. And the third is to implement the incredible 5-point scale by following or adapting the recommended steps shared during this presentation. You're probably wondering, should I start writing down everything she says? Nope, no need to. You'll find a PDF of this presentation within the resource folder. Go ahead and use the QR code, or if you have another device, go ahead and type in the bit.ly. This presentation is sponsored by the Kentucky Autism Training Center. The Kentucky Autism Training Center, or KATC, is committed to improving the quality of life for autistics in the state of Kentucky through all stages and setting of life. That means from 0 to 99, from schools to the community to the workplace, and of course, home. One of the foundations of our work is the NCAEP evidence-based practices that have been found to be the most effective for teaching autistics. You will find a copy of the report of these evidence-based practices within that resource folder. As of right now, in 2024, there are 28 evidence-based practices. Don't worry, we're not going to go over all of them. Just know that we will be including some of them within this presentation. Not only does the incredible 5-point scale meet the visual supports evidence-based practice, but the teaching of it, the whole concept of it, and the implementation of it also includes cognitive behavioral support, modeling, prompting, and reinforcement. Let's first talk about what visual supports are. I think that some of you may recognize that term if you're in the schools, but some of you may be wondering, well, other than the obvious meaning of the 2 words, visual and support, what does it exactly mean? Well, as you can see from the definition on this screen, it basically is providing concrete representations of abstract ideas. For what reason? Well, as you can see in the sunglasses, a visual presentation of information is a lot easier and a lot quicker to process information. In fact, I would argue that we live in a very visual society. I mean, from bringing up your calendars on your phone to all the little icons that are on your phone to all the icons in society, from the McDonald's golden arches to knowing when you see certain car decals and their logos, what that represents. So that's basically what visual supports are in a nutshell. But how you use them is really what makes them the support part. When we use visual supports, we are interacting with them for a multiples of reasons to navigate daily routines like the schedules. It could also be daily routines on how to do stuff, using task analysis, breaking it down, and then putting each of the steps into either pictures through symbols or photos. It can also be managing behavior. And it could be a variety of things from choice boards to breaking down the steps, from just a visual cue card, a lot of things. I mean, stop signs out in society, that is a visual support that we all use, whether we are driving a car, riding a bicycle, or walking down the street. So even if it didn't say the word stop, we would still know that that hexagon, a red hexagon, is for stop, and interacting with it is the visual support part. Promotes communication. A lot of the visual communication boards that our students will use, or that if anybody who has any type of challenges with speech may use. It also defines social situations. In education, we use social stories a lot of times to explain perspectives or how things work. Um, for those of you who buy things from IKEA or Target, you know that when you have to build something, a lot of it is just pictures, and that would be considered a visual support because you have to interact with it and you have to follow it in order to understand how to build it. So the social situation kind of works that way, but it is explaining how a situation um, socially works in the sense of what the person can expect, how does a person supposed to react, what are the expectations, whatever they need to be successful. Teaching and reinforcing independence, that is the whole purpose behind visual supports, is to help uh, individuals or groups of people be as independent as possible. Again, just think uh, of your schedule that you access, whether it's paper or on your phone. We also have that for students. Some the whole class can use, and it just needs to be moved just to show what to expect, what's next, how long something's going to last. Or some students actually have, or individuals have individuals schedules for a certain activity, just to break it down so the student or the individual knows what to expect. Cognitive behavioral therapy is also another one of our evidence-based practices that are integrated into the Incredible Five-Point Scale, because the whole point of the Incredible Five-Point Scale as a visual support is for the student to become, or the client to become more aware of their self-regulation, the states of their self-regulation, and in a way be able to communicate about it. So some of you may be wondering, well, I've heard that term before, but what does it mean? So hopefully you've been reading it as I've been talking, but basically their cognitive behavioral strategies are based on the belief that learning and behavior are mediated by the cognitive process, right? What we think. We know that students with autism, many of them are visual learners because they actually memorize the visuals that they're looking at and they refer back to them over and over again. Same thing auditorily as the words that they're either hearing as they read, or it's read to them, um, or visually as they read it, they're memorizing it. So the same thing will happen with the Incredible Five-Point Scale. So it's using cognitive behavioral therapy because it's teaching them to examine their own thoughts and emotions and then use step-by-step strategies to learn how to self-regulate, what they should do when they feel certain things, or if they're not aware of how they feel yet, when their body looks a certain way. And it'll make more sense when we get to the Incredible Five-Point Scale if you've never heard about it. But the whole goal is to create self-awareness and also help them to control their behavior. Uh, a lot of these cognitive behavior therapy strategies, though, do not come naturally to most people. And so explicit learning is used, which is why we're going to also talk about reinforcement and direct instruction. Um, and you will also see that a lot of other things are involved, right? A lot of other strategies, evidence-based practices, modeling, prompting, reinforcement, like I said, peer-based instruction, and parent-implemented interventions. Because this can be used not only in the clinic, at school, but also at home, in the community. It's just a form of way of learning about self-regulation, learning what can help to self-regulate and calm one's system down or alert it, um, and how to communicate about it if they need help. The Incredible Five-Point Scale was created by Carrie Dunburn and Mitzi Curtis. Carrie Dunburn does talk a lot about this strategy. She's usually the one out there talking about it. And I linked a video. It is about 20 minutes long that you can watch. I'm not going to do it for this presentation, but she will talk about how it's different than a behavioral support plan, because it's that cognitive behavioral therapy. It's creating that self-awareness, giving them the tools. But first, it gives everybody around them the tools of how to help the student be able to self-regulate. And then eventually the student learns how to self-regulate as well. So I invite you to watch this video when you access the PDF from your resource folder. One thing that you need to know in order to most effectively use the 5-point scale, the incredible 5-point scale, is what happens during a meltdown. Now, this is different than a tantrum, okay? Although tantrums can turn into meltdowns if they last long enough and the student does escalate, but it is not the same. At one point, tantrums and meltdowns were considered the same. I've seen it in a lot of older literature, so I just want to point that out that if you thought it was the same, it's reasonable why you thought that because they used to be used interchangeably, but they no longer are because we understand just through technology and understanding, how our body works, um, that tantrums are something that a person can control, right? So, for example, if a student really wants a cookie, and they have learned that if they throw themselves on the ground, start crying, start hitting, that they will get that cookie. And as soon as they get that cookie, they are completely calm. No more tears or supposed tears, right? It's almost like it never happened. But with a meltdown, it is a physiological uh, phenomenon in the body. So once the student starts to escalate, and another way you can look at it, the escalation of a meltdown, maybe anxiety is a good way to describe it, because I think we all know what anxiety feels like in the body. So once that student starts to feel that anxiousness, then it starts to change their whole way their body works. And as that anxiety builds and builds and it escalates, then their body tends to start to stop functioning as well. Um, and then it gets to the point where their body can't handle it anymore. They can no longer control themselves, and it goes into a meltdown. Okay, so now that I described it that way, and hopefully you've been looking at this graphic right here. So I know the print is very small, but you have one of these in your resource folder, so you can take a look at it later. Number one is calm and alert. Okay, this is when our body is functioning the best. Level two is where the anxiety starts to grow. Okay. Level three is where it starts to increase. And then level four is where it's increased so much that it's almost unbearable. And then five is where that meltdown, that painful explosion sometimes, because that's where that fight, flight, or freeze reaction of our body is triggered. And so if it's not fighting, if it's not running away, then it may be freezing, which is you may see the student crawl or the clients crawl up in a chair or under a desk or something like that. The thing about this is that it will take a a good amount of time for them to come back down. And let me tell you a couple things about uh, these different levels. At level two and at level three, a person can make a U-turn if they know how to self-regulate. They can make a U-turn and calm themselves down and to get back to a one. Okay. At number four, this is basically the safe zone. And then number five, we talked about number five, what that is. Also, the more they increase from number one, so at number two, three, four, and five, the less likely or less ability they have to speak or to understand language. So once anybody's anxiety starts to grow, language, communication in general goes right out the window. Now, it doesn't mean that some people are not able to speak. They're just not able to control what comes out of their mouth. And I think we all can relate to that at one point or another. Think of a time when you've been now, and remember, I'm using the word anxiety as a placeholder for this feeling, but it also can be exhaustion. It could be sickness caused by allergies or common cold, or it can be anxiety or anger, frustration. Okay. But just think of a time when you experienced that and something was going on and you wanted to say something, but that just nothing would come out of your mouth. It was happening in your brain, but nothing would come out. Also, the same thing may happen on the opposite end. Maybe you did say something, but you said a lot of things that you would have never said calmly, and you really didn't mean. Also, the same thing happens receptively. People, somebody was saying something to you and you didn't hear at all what they said. You have no memory of what they said, or you totally misunderstood what they said while you were in this heightened state. Okay, so I think that this is something, in a way, you can say that this cycle of a meltdown can apply to all of us. Well, when you have autism, that it makes you more hypo, so that means lower, so make you maybe be a little tired or hyper or more sensitive. Either way, your body has the tendency to either be very sluggish or very hyper to processing everything around them. So we're usually more familiar with the hyper students that are clients that are very hypersensitive to sound or smell or touch. And the opposite, the hypo would just mean the students that are always a little bit sluggish. They tend to process a little bit slower. They seem to be always tired when they first come in or at certain times of the day because their system is just gets really sluggish. It takes a lot of energy out of them to process everything in their environment, especially outside their comfort zone, which is the comfort zone, the most familiar is probably home. So anything outside is going to be very exhausting for them. So this is where you can start to see them go up this escalation scale. Okay. So this does not mean energy so much as just that the frustration and the anxiety over their body not working as efficiently as they are at number one. Okay. Now that I've explained this to you, now you will see how the 5-point scale will work. Okay, so why the 5-point scale specifically? Why this tool? Okay, well, this tool, like I mentioned before, allows clients to identify their emotions and learn to express and to regulate them. It equips the clients with their own toolbox of strategies. So it's very individualized, and it helps them learn how to work through their own emotions. So if you are in an environment where they are using another social emotional learning curriculum, this 5-point scale will work. That will be compatible with it because the one thing that the curriculums don't have are individualized. Plans for some kids that need it. Okay, and a lot of students with autism or autistics do need to learn about their bodies and what works for them. What works, most people are pretty individualized, but most like the breathing helps a lot of people. A lot of people will have coping skills that they learn, but with students with autism, a lot of them aren't able to implicitly learn self-regulating skills. And so this helps them learn it. Not only does it provide that visual support, but through everybody around them knowing what will help, it also can incorporate the reinforcement, modeling, involve their peers, parents, and everything else I mentioned before. And I think I just mentioned this, it's a visual support for everyone to help them self-regulate and avoid those meltdowns if possible. Oh, that's right. I forgot I put this one on there. It also is something that you can start using right away. Yes. So if you have a situation where you don't have time to go through the curriculum through a curriculum, this tool is very simple and it's very effective and it can be started to use within weeks. Okay. All right. Just to let you know, because if you were to Google incredible 5-point scale, you will find that there are a lot of different versions of it, a lot of formats of it. Okay. The two main ones is to be used with anger or anxiety and voice levels. I know, two completely different things. So if you've seen this before with voice levels, you're correct. It's the same type. They've also now at this point, if you haven't had any of the books or seen any examples, they also use it with a lot of other situations that, can be fit into a 5 point scale. But today we are just talking about using it with anger or anxiety. Okay. We're also talking about a certain type of format of the 5 point scale. And it's this one. It has these four columns. Okay. And it's going to have 6 rows. Of course, the top one for the labels, but then of course the 5 different levels. Okay. And then this is why this is the important one. And this because it's going to feed right into everything I've talked about to this point. A lot looks like and sounds like. Okay, as you will see examples in a minute, and you might, when you saw the first one on the title page, looks like, sounds like, can be the different faces that are made during each level, right? One being happy, calm, and alert. Number two being a little bit anxious. Number three, you can go different faces. But some self advocates or adults with autism or autistic adults have mentioned that those faces do not really represent what their face would look like. That's why it's so abstract to them when they're taught this in school. So they learn in school and they learn what they're supposed to say, but they don't really, feel like it really reflects them. What may reflect them better, and I'm not saying it's all autistics, okay? What may reflect them better is what it sounds like if they make certain sounds or their body makes certain sounds or feels like. I mean, worked with many students and clients where they will describe what their body feels like versus using the word anxious, mad, sad, any of those feelings that we usually go through. So that's why these two uh, columns are very important. Um, Also, this looks like and sound like you're going to see, it doesn't have to be the student's face or body. It could be their favorite character that we're talking about. And this will be the buy-in for many students. As probably many of you may know, because Temple Grandin made this very popular. But if you don't, if you're new to the autism world, using students' strengths and high interests is the best way to make something meaningful for them. And autistics or individuals with autism tend to learn skills or information that are related to things that are meaningful to them. So, and so you can place any type of characters if you're working with children or not, or items in the looks like, sounds like. So, and they can choose what they want to put in there. And then, of course, feels like is how their body feels. And for some students, you may not know that, right? So for sounds, they may, I mean, not you won't know that. They may not know how to describe that because that is in itself is abstract. So you may want to observe them as they're escalating and write some notes and put that in there and then teach them this is what your body's doing. It looks like it's at a number 2 or number 3 because I see that this is happening. Or I hear that, you know, or especially for some students that stimming is one way that they try to calm themselves down when they feel that their body is dysregulated. So if a client of yours starts to vocally stim, that may go underneath this box, and they say certain things, or they're scripting. That may be what goes under the sounds like. So hopefully that kind of puts it into context why this format seems to work the best for our purposes today. Okay, so how do we create an incredible 5 point scale? The concept sounds easy, but it's not as easy as it sounds. Okay, first, if you can include the individual that you're creating this for in the process, you want to do this when they're calm. Okay, you want to talk about like this is fun activity. That's why I said like if you pick something that's meaningful to them to put in that first column, that will help. Um, and then you can ask them how their body feels or looks like during each level. Choose the image, identify what, and then Ask them what they think helps them feel calm and alert at the first one, and what they can do to help themselves get back down to one. If you can't involve the client at all those levels, then you may need to help them by either doing some detective work, asking parents, asking other colleagues, anybody else who knows the client. What strategies have you seen? When do you know that the student is escalating? For example, the other day, I was observing some clients or students, and believe it or not, the first number two for this one student was eating. Yep, eating. And then another thing, number two was tiptoeing. And then number three was starting to bite their fingers, and then so on, so on. So you can see, so observe the student and see everything that goes on before they start to escalate. So you may need to put your detective hat on for this one. Okay. As you're creating, this is what you're looking for. Okay. You're you could take your for the pictures, the feels like you could take pictures of the client with, of course, with parents' permission if they're under 18, and with the client's permission, whether they're under 18 or over 18, just make sure that's okay with them. And if they know how to make different faces during different levels, they understand the whole concept behind it, then they may think it's fun. But again, you may need to Google some images. I know the popular one right now is inside out characters, right? Very applicable. And so some people have started to use those. Um, use the individual's favorite characters. Okay, that's what we were just talking about. So I got ahead of myself. Or have them draw the faces. If you have a client who loves to draw, have them draw the faces for each one. Okay, and that may change, and that's okay. That's okay. As they learn more about themselves, they may change what the faces look like, and or put, like you see in number three, there's different faces. So that's okay. Have clients identify calming or learning strategies to help them return to one. Okay, that's what I mentioned. And really, really have them think about their body looks like or feels like. Um, oh, it looks like this one. I just downloaded this off of off of um another worksheet, but yeah, they don't have the same as we do, where it looks like, feels like, and then feels like they switched it. But you want to put what their body feels like right in the middle. Again, this may be something that you are observing at first, so you may not have much in that column. But for self-awareness, it eventually will help the student. Maybe their tummy hurts, their stomach hurts, or maybe they're sweating, so they get really hot. Maybe they start to have a headache, their head hurts. Maybe they feel very antsy, like they can't sit. So those are a couple different things. All right. Speaking of, um, before you even get to that part, though, with the student, you want to do one for yourself. Yes, this is a very, very important part of the process. I will tell you personally, from trying to teach multiple groups how to create one of these for their clients or students, that they would look at me with deers in headlight and say, I try to do it with the student, but I didn't even know the prompting questions to ask them. I observed and I put it down, but I didn't know how to talk to them about it. So when I was with another group and somebody said, "Well, let's do it ourselves. Let's talk this out. Let's write down the prompting questions we ask ourselves." Great idea, right? So they did, and after they did that, that group, when they tried to do it with their students, had a more successful experience with it. And they had no problem thinking of the prompting questions and thinking outside the box, because they thought about what it was like for them. So, what you've been looking at as I've been explaining that little story to you is that on the left is mine. Okay. I am more of drawing my faces. Um, and then on the right is my colleagues, and she loves to do everything on the computer. So that's why you see all the graphics. So it just depends, right? It's all up to the student. Like I said, it can change too. As they become more self-aware, they really start to understand, right? It becomes more concrete to them. And you can see how ours was totally different, right? So even our number one, I just put my body is awake, alert, and calm. And I say, stay wonderful. And she says, I am calm and smiling. I'm content and satisfied. And I keep going. Number two, I had put my body's feeling heavy or antsy. So either one, hypo or hyper. And I have a hard time focusing. That's when I know I'm starting to become more dysregulated. And she put, um, not focused, distracted, blank expression, unsure, anticipation. And then what we can try, different for both of us, get drink or water or caffeine for myself, take notes or start to doodle. And for her, she's squeezing a stress ball and she says positive information, affirmations. Stress balls do nothing for me. I do not feel my anxiety going away at all. But for her, it does. So this is why it's so important to really make this as individualized as possible. And then as you were reading, if you can see mine, I know I just had to take a picture of my one that I wrote. You can see it just keeps on. Each one is different for both of us. So again, I encourage you to fill one out and you'll find up blank ones in the resource folder so you can make as many copies as you'd like and you can start over as many times as you want to. All right. Speaking of, let's create one together. We're going to do, I know it's virtual. There's right. I can't really hear you, but I did do this presentation live. So I will try to replicate what happened when we did it. Okay. So I filled it out with the like her graphics, similar graphics to what my colleague put. And I filled out number one, five, because those are probably the easiest. I would start with those. If you're starting blank, start with those because those are probably the easiest. We know that number one is calm and alert. And, just you put a positive affirmation for yourself, something reinforcing. But we know that number five is the meltdown, which many self advocates would say is painful. Um, and for us, we know that it's just devastating. It's something that usually, we feel bad about, for a long time afterwards. And hopefully the ramifications of having a meltdown aren't too bad, but sometimes they can be. Um, so let's go ahead and try to fill out just a couple of the middle. So I'm gonna go into my Google Slides, and some people put for feels like, some people did put they started to bite their nails. Yep. And so I wasn't, for number three, some put that they felt sweaty. They started sweating, even if it wasn't hot. Okay. And when we asked the group, well, what's some things you can try? Um, some people did say the deep, slow breaths. I remember at this point, a lot of your clients will probably have been told some of this stuff. So you may hear some of the things that have been taught, and then you really ask them, like, does that really make you feel better? You know? And then others said calling a friend. Okay. And if that's not possible to call a friend, um, then they said, um, I think it was I think one of somebody said, like, take a break, like, go outside, um, and if they could go outside, like, at least leave the room where they're in and until they calm down a little bit more and felt better. So there's different things. And then number four, remember, if you get to number four, this is where you just want to be safe. This is where you're about to explode. It's really hard to make a U-turn at this point. So it feels like uh, body body is going to explode. So it's right there on the edge, and then um, get to a safe place, which is also 4 or 5. go to a safe place. And this one is stay in a safe place. Okay. So it might be just as you can start just as simple as that and then add on as you need to, but it's those prompting questions. Remember, cognitive behavioral therapy, those prompting questions that you're asking yourself as you're filling this out, or you can ask other people if you're not sure what to put, right? And that's how you're going to help your student or client do it as well. Okay, let's get back to our presentation. All right, so how did this come about, right? Why did I feel like it was so important, and KTC and Aetna feel like it was so important to get this information out to everyone? Well, this was used in a situation where there were three different clients, and actually it was really client one was the one that we needed to find a quick resolution, and in the sense of helping the client or student to help with communication, help with regulation, because all of these were happening. Meltdown behavior was occurring daily. There was a lot of physical aggression in there, not only to themselves but to others. There was a lot of screaming and crying, throwing of objects, and the student didn't have a lot of communication. And like I said, goes out the window as you escalate. So even more so. And in this case, it was at a school and they already came to school escalated. So it didn't take too long for them to get to the meltdown mode. And they had tried so many different things and nothing was working. Um, Client two, this was also a situation, got upset, frustrated over schedules and difficult tasks. Couldn't express with anybody what was going on, what was wrong, usually verbal. And they lacked any coping skills to help them self-regulate. And then client number three was also very, easily upset and frustrated over difficult tasks. A lot of crying, refusal to speak, or anything like that, which could be freeze mode if they escalated all the way, right? They just shut down. Um, and they usually had very strong communication skills. So if they were at a one or a two, they usually could say what was going on, but they escalated so quickly. And you know that there are always those clients and students that go from 0 to 60. I hear about them all the time. And usually what this means when you have a client that goes from 0 to 60 is that they have a lot of good coping skills, meaning, no one wants to be the one who's throwing things, yelling, crying, screaming. And like I said, a lot of self-advocates say this process is painful. So a lot of clients or students try to keep it together for as long as possible. They want to be successful. They don't want to be the one. Remember, we're not talking about tantrums, okay? They don't want to be the one that can't handle it. Okay. So they cope and cope and cope and cope until their coping skills don't work anymore. And then they explode because inside they're so dysregulated that when their coping skills wear out, it's so exhausting, they have the meltdown. So, yes. So, this is where, for those clients and students, you need to be a really good detective because they probably are not aware. They just know their body feels um, doesn't feel right, and that they just keep it together. Right? That's all they know. This is not a conscious thing for many of these individuals. Um, so. So talking through it with them may help them come to realize that they can control it other than their coping skills. Okay, that they can calm their body down. They can make that feeling start to lessen just by doing some self-regulation strategies. Okay, so planning it, just like anything, anything that's good, anything that's effective, there is a planning process behind it. I'm not going to go through everything, but you have examples of all of this in your resource folder. I have an example of a script. You have a whole team that you're working with. Um, Writing down when to use certain words or when to use or not to use certain words because they can be triggering, right? And we talked about how after a certain level, usually, as they increase their level on that graphic, on that bell curve, the less they're going to be able to not only express but also receive. So go look at the script and you'll see how they explain each of the levels. Remember, this is an example, and what words or can be used during each level. Social stories are always great at explaining the whole concept of how this tool works, why you're asking the student to use this tool, what's the goal, all that kind of stuff. So I put a social story example of a social story there too, and then of course you have your blank 5 point scales to use. Key thing is make sure that you identify meaningful reinforcements for the clients when you're teaching this, okay? Because this is a very even though it'll eventually be very meaningful to them, and it's making a very abstract concept, self-regulation, become concrete. The whole idea of using it and what we're talking about is still abstract, right? So make it meaningful. If you're not sure what's reinforcing to them, what's going to be the most meaningful, I included a preference assessment in there that you can use to identify what they like the most, either by asking them or asking their caregivers, or other colleagues that have worked with them, and then identify the top five and use those. Find out what their high interests are. You probably already know um, what they like to talk about, and include that. Put for younger kids, put stickers all over it. Have it when you print the 5 point scale, have whatever their favorite things are on there already. Something that, again, that's going to make it them individualized for them and make it meaningful to them. um, Teach the clients about the 5 point scale. um, you know um, Show them yours. That's another good reason to have yours. They love to hear about you. So show them yours and how, why you put the answers that you did. And then create the individualized. This may take a couple sessions depending on how quickly they grasp it. Remember, though, that you want to model this. So you may put yours up somewhere. And then as you're in session with them, as you're working with them, you can identify if your regulation has changed, even through a glass of water, right? Like, whew, I'm feeling a little tired right now, or my mouth is very dry. I'm not feeling great right now. I think I'm going to get a glass of water, and that, and take some deep breaths and to help myself come back to calm and alert. So it's going to be depending on your setting and the individuals you're working with, it'll be different, and yourself, of course, and their understanding. But modeling is going to help them understand and give them permission to use theirs as well. Let's see, I mentioned the script, the social story. um, Train everybody using those tools, modeling, prompting, reinforcement. Might be reinforcement too for the caregivers, right, and for the staff. But yes, try to make it as meaningful as possible for everyone. Now, if you're teaching a group of students, like you have a group of clients that you want to use this with, or a group of students, you can make a large one for the class and teach it as a whole group. This is something that one of the teachers I worked with did. And they just talked about it as their whole class. And they were able to put pictures of themselves and pictures of what they can do that was available in the classroom. This also related to zones of regulation, which is why you see the colors going all the way across. So they related to the zones of regulation, and then they put numbers and words on here. In fact, I'll show you an example of it in a second. There was a lot of role playing as they were talking about it. Okay. So you can, again, make it as fun as you can, right? Do some modeling. If they like to watch videos, then, have them watch a video of doing a certain type of breathing, or using whatever tool that you have in the classroom that helps, or in your office that helps. So it just depends on the group that you're working with, and what you have available to you. So this is what their group one looked like at the end, when I think she just used different colors of construction paper put it all together, and then what it looks like, what I can do. And then the lamination looks like she laminated, and then she wrote it down there. It looked like she had some readers. But you see that they took pictures of themselves and then put other cartoons. So I think they did this over a week's or a few sessions. So that's probably why you see so many variations. Again, sometimes, you build upon it depending on the understanding. Then make sure that they have their own individualized ones, whether they make it with you, you co-create it, or you make it for the individual initially because, they don't have the words, they don't really understand the concepts yet, so you just make it. But have it, stay with them wherever they go, so that anybody working with them can relate, can look at it and help that student learn when they're the different levels, and then learn to, to do the techniques that helps them de-escalate or come down to number one. Um, let's see. I might have already mentioned this because I tend to get ahead of myself on this part. So the script, let's see, when the teacher I was just telling you about who made for the group, um, oh, she's talking about the modeling. Yeah. So Miss Amanda feels green or one because she's so excited to see everyone. Miss Claudia's feeling yellow. So that was another staff member because she does not understand why the computer is not working and she can't figure it out. She can ask Miss Amanda for help. So again, that must have been on their chart. So they just, spoke like that just to normalize it because, kids will use tools if they're normalized and everybody else is using it. Okay. Oh, here's some highlights of the script. And so if those of you who have not seen it yet, you can see that it really like looks at each contingency. If this is happening, if that is happening, if that is happening. So it depends on your setting. You want to plan for as much as possible so that everybody's on the same page, right? They're prompting the same, they're using similar words at each level. They're looking for the same type of behavior, so you might want to operationalize it. So whatever you can do to make it clear how to use the tool. You also see inside the resource folder a handout that you can make a lanyard out. That will help to model as well, because what they ended up doing is they ended up all putting, using lanyards with it on there so that whenever they were outside of their setting, their educational setting, or their therapeutic setting, they could use that number system still and still use the same language. And then if they observed the individual or individuals start to escalate, they could use that visual support to help them recognize that they were at a 2 or 3, and then they had for lack of a better term, cheat sheet. But it's not really, but it's just a breakdown of what strategies worked with each of their clients. Okay. Um, so tips to remember to include the students or the clients as much as possible in the creation. Teach when the client is calm. And I recommend you see that the calm is highlighted when you go to the PDF. Click on that calm um, word, and you're going to see a video about practicing um, for these kind of using these type of tools when they're calm, so that they can more effectively use them when they're not calm and when they need them the most. They use one of the examples they use is first responders, and how first responders, firefighters, EMTs, the police, they practice over and over, practice a lot before the emergency actually happens, because even though that's the job they chose and they're professional, it's still a stressful environment. And so they want their mind to go into automatic mode of what the strategies they need to put out the fire or help a patient. Okay, so it's a really, really good explanation. Teach in sections if needed. Like I said, depends on your setting and your clients. Consistently model and implement, normalize it, use meaningful reinforcement, okay, and provide additional supports as needed. The social narratives are there for you, lanyard communication, meaningful reinforcement, always use that, and scripts you can give to staff and caregivers. And with that, I put the references in case you want to look up anything that we talked about. And I thank you for attending the session, and thank you for all you do for your clients and students. Take care. Bye-bye.